A gentleman came to me after my Friday evening lecture in Los Angeles. He had been studying my teachings for 3 years. 3 years, my friend. He knew every technique I had shared. The state akin to sleep, revision, living in the end. He could quote my words back to me with perfect accuracy. Yet his life remained unchanged. Not one desire had materialized, not one prayer had been answered. And do you know what he said to me? Neville, I do everything exactly as you teach. I imagine every night before sleep. I feel it real, but nothing happens. I looked at this sincere man and I knew immediately what he was doing wrong. It is the same mistake that 90% of those who hear me make. They think they understand the secret of imagining because they have heard me speak of feeling, but what they are doing when they imagine, what they call feeling, is the very opposite of what I mean by feeling. Tonight I will tell you the difference. I will tell you the secret that most students hear once, nod their heads in agreement, and never truly grasp. Because the secret is so simple, they assume they already know it. Now, before I tell you what this man was doing wrong, I must show you why so many who practice imagination fail to see results. They believe that success in this work depends on the vividness of their mental pictures. They think it depends on how clearly they can see their desired outcome. My friend, this is not the case. This has never been the case. I have known students who could construct the most elaborate mental scenes. They could see every detail with perfect clarity. The colors were vivid, the sounds were clear, every element was precisely as they wished it to be. Yet their imaginations bore no fruit whatsoever. And I have known others who could barely form a mental picture, whose visualizations were vague and indistinct, yet whose every assumption materialized with mathematical precision. The difference lies not in what you see, the difference lies in the state of consciousness from which you imagine. Most who hear me speak of the drowsy state think I am merely giving them a technique for relaxation. They believe I am telling them to imagine when they are drowsy simply because the mind is more receptive when relaxed. But this misses the deeper truth entirely. But hold this thought. There is a specific signal, a moment in your practice when you know the assumption has taken hold of your consciousness, that most students never learn to recognize. Without recognizing that signal, you will practice for months, as that gentleman did, never knowing whether your imagination is creating or merely fantasizing. I will give you that signal in just a moment, for it determines everything. The drowsy state is not a technique. It is the natural doorway between the world of Caesar and the world of imagination. It is the moment when the reasoning mind, with all its limitations and protests, steps aside. And in that moment, my friend, consciousness can assume what reason would never accept. Let me tell you of a woman who came to my lecture in Brooklyn many years ago. She had been married to the same man for 15 years. For 15 years she had endured his drinking, his unemployment, his broken promises. She wanted to manifest a different husband altogether. Not to change this man, but to be married to someone completely different. She had been practicing visualization for 8 months when she came to me. She told me she would lie in bed each night and picture herself with this other man. She could see his face clearly. She could imagine their conversations. She could visualize their wedding day with perfect detail. Yet nothing changed in her outer world. Her husband continued drinking. Their financial troubles persisted. She began to doubt whether the law worked at all. I asked her one simple question. When you imagine yourself with this other man, I said, do you feel like a woman who is happily married to him? Or do you feel like a woman who is visualizing being married to him? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I feel like I am trying very hard to make something happen that has not happened yet. There, my friend, was her error. And there was the signal I promised you. She was imagining from the state of lack, not from the state of fulfillment. She was feeling like a woman who was attempting to get something rather than feeling like a woman who already possessed it. The scene was perfect, the visualization was vivid, but the state was entirely wrong. The signal you must learn to recognize is this. When you imagine correctly, you do not feel like someone trying to make something happen. You feel like someone to whom it has already happened. That naturalness, that ease, that quiet confidence, that is the signal that your assumption has taken hold. I told her to abandon the elaborate visualizations. I told her to stop trying to see anything at all. Instead, when she entered that drowsy state before sleep, she was simply to feel herself to be a happily married woman, not trying to become one, not hoping to become one, but feeling herself to be one now. At first, she resisted this instruction. She said, "But Neville, if I do not visualize the specific man I want, how will I get him?" I explained to her that her consciousness, when it assumes the state of being happily married, will attract to itself whatever is necessary to make that assumption a fact. She need not concern herself with the how. The how is consciousness expressing itself. She came to me again 6 weeks later. Her husband had stopped drinking entirely. He had found steady employment. Their marriage had transformed so completely that she no longer desired to leave him. She had gotten her wish, but not in the way her reasoning mind had planned. Consciousness had found its own perfect way. This brings me to the heart of what most students never grasp. They think imagination is about creating mental movies. They believe feeling means emotional excitement about their desires. You have heard me speak of feeling, and I know that many of you have misunderstood me. Let me be plain. Feeling, as I use the term, means the acceptance of the wish as already fulfilled. It means assuming the state of consciousness that would be yours if your desire were now a fact. There is no such thing as feeling excited about getting something you do not have and calling that the wish fulfilled. Put it from your mind. Now I must tell you something most teachers will not. There is a detail in this teaching, a specific distinction between assumption and mere hoping, that has been stripped from every modern interpretation of the law. I will give you that distinction now, and it changes everything you think you know about feeling. When I say feel it real, I do not mean work yourself into an emotional frenzy about having it. I mean rest in the natural feeling of already being what you want to be. If you desired to be wealthy, you would not walk around feeling excited about money. You would walk around feeling like a wealthy person for whom money is natural and abundant. That calm assumption, that quiet confidence, that is feeling. Most who hear me make the mistake of that gentleman from Los Angeles. They know intellectually that consciousness creates reality. They understand that imagination, when properly used, creates facts. But when they practice the art, they practice it from the wrong state entirely. They practice it as someone trying to get something rather than as someone who already has it. Here is the distinction I promised you. Assumption feels like acceptance. Hope feels like reaching. When you assume you are wealthy, you rest in wealth as a fact of your existence. When you hope to become wealthy, you feel the gap between where you are and where you want to be. The difference is everything, my friend. Assumption operates from fulfillment. Hope operates from lack. I learned this principle from my teacher Abdullah in New York many years ago. I had come to him wanting to travel from New York to Barbados for Christmas. I had no money for the passage. I had no clear way to make the journey possible. But I had heard that this man could teach me to use my imagination to create circumstances. When I told Abdullah of my desire, he looked at me and said simply, "You are in Barbados." I protested that I was obviously in New York. I showed him my surroundings, my circumstances, my empty pockets, but he would not be moved. "You are in Barbados," he repeated. Then he turned and walked away. At first I thought the man was mad. How could he say I was in Barbados when I was clearly standing before him in his apartment in New York? But something in his certainty made me consider his words more deeply. He was not describing my physical location. He was describing the state of consciousness I needed to assume. That night, as I prepared for sleep, I did not visualize myself traveling to Barbados. I did not imagine the ship or the journey or the arrangements that would need to be made. Instead, I simply assumed I was in Barbados. I felt the warm tropical air. I sensed the familiar sounds and sense of my homeland. And most importantly, I felt it natural to be there. I did not strain to hold these thoughts. I did not effort to maintain the visualization. I simply rested in the assumption that I was where I wanted to be, and I allowed sleep to take me in that state. Within the week, circumstances had arranged themselves in ways I could never have planned. A stranger offered to pay my passage. The arrangements fell into place as if by magic. I was in Barbados for Christmas because I had first been in Barbados in consciousness. Remember what I told you about that woman from Brooklyn, my friend? She learned to abandon the elaborate visualizations. Now this is where you see why. This is the secret that most hear once and never truly understand. The world will tell you it is about positive thinking. Teachers everywhere will tell you it is about visualizing desired outcomes. I tell you they are wrong. It is about assuming the state of consciousness that corresponds to your fulfilled desire and living from that state until it hardens into fact. The drowsy state is crucial because it is in this drowsy condition that the conscious mind's resistance dissolves. When you are fully awake, reason protests every assumption that contradicts present evidence. When you are asleep, consciousness is not directed by your will, but in that twilight moment between waking and sleeping, you can consciously assume any state while the reasoning mind offers no resistance. But before I tell you how to apply this tonight, there is one final thing about the moment of transition, the precise instant when you move from assumption into sleep, that determines whether your practice bears fruit or remains mere fantasy. Most who study the law lose everything in that transition. I must address that moment now, but here is where most go wrong again. They enter this drowsy state and then proceed to effort and strain to hold their desired thoughts. They fight against their minds when other thoughts arise. They work to maintain their visualizations with the same intensity they would use in their waking hours. This defeats the entire purpose. The drowsy state is meant to be effortless. You gently assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. When other thoughts come, you gently return to your assumption. You do not fight, you do not strain, you rest in the feeling of having what you desire, and you allow that feeling to carry you into sleep. Here is that transition moment I promised you. As sleep approaches, you must not grasp at your assumption. You must not try to carry it forcibly into sleep. Instead, you rest so completely in the feeling of the wish fulfilled that when sleep takes you, it takes you in that state. The assumption becomes the soil in which sleep plants itself. This is the secret most never learn. I tell you, my friend, I tell you, the moment you truly understand this, your entire relationship with imagination changes. You stop trying to make things happen. You stop efforting to create your desires. Instead, you simply assume the consciousness of already having what you want, and you live from that assumption until the outer world reflects it back to you. Let me be more specific about how to apply this principle tonight when you retire to your bed. This is not theory, my friend. This is the practical application that will transform your experience if you will faithfully practice it. First, you will allow yourself to become drowsy. Do not fight sleep, but do not seek it too quickly either. Rest in that peaceful state where consciousness is still directed by your will, but resistance from the reasoning mind has dissolved. Second, in that drowsy state, you will assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. If you desire success in your business, assume you are the successful person you wish to be. If you desire harmony in your relationships, assume you are the person who enjoys that harmony now. Feel it natural, feel it real, feel it as simply a fact of your existence. Third, do not strain to hold this feeling. Do not effort to maintain specific thoughts or images. Simply rest in the assumption as you would rest in a comfortable chair. When other thoughts arise, gently return to your assumption without struggle or self-criticism. Fourth, allow sleep to overtake you while dwelling in this assumption. Let the feeling of the wish fulfilled be the last conscious state you occupy before sleep takes you completely. In this way, you impress your desire upon the subconscious mind at the moment when it is most receptive to such impression. And fifth, trust that consciousness will find its own perfect way to make your assumption a fact in the outer world. Do not concern yourself with how it will happen. Do not plan the means or manipulate circumstances. Your part is to assume. The response of the world is automatic. Most students fail because they practice this technique a few times and then abandon it when they do not see immediate results. Now I must insist on this, my friend. Assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. This is not my opinion. This is law. Do not let anyone, including yourself, talk you out of persistent assumption because the outer world has not yet reflected your inner change. How long will this take? It depends entirely on how quickly you can make the new assumption feel natural. For some, it is a matter of days. For others, weeks or months. But I promise you this. If you will faithfully assume the consciousness of your fulfilled desire every night as you fall asleep, your assumption must eventually express itself in your experience. Do not be discouraged if your first attempts feel forced or unnatural. This is to be expected. You are assuming a state that contradicts your present evidence. Of course, it will feel strange at first, but persistence will make it natural, repetition will make it real, and faith in the law will make it fact. Remember what I told you a few moments ago about that gentleman who practiced for 3 years? His error was not in his dedication. His error was in practicing from the wrong state. Now you know better. Now you know the secret. The world you see around you now is nothing more than your past assumptions objectified. Every circumstance, every relationship, every condition of your life is consciousness pushed out. When you change your consciousness, you change your world. It cannot be otherwise, for consciousness is the only reality. Make no mistake about this, my friend. What I am sharing with you tonight is not positive thinking. It is not wishful fantasy. It is the fundamental creative principle of existence. You are not trying to influence some external deity or universal force. You are exercising your divine power as the creator of your own experience. And now I tell you, my friend, the secret you have just heard is not a secret at all. It has been hiding in plain sight in every sentence I have spoken. The state, my friend, the state, when you assume the wish fulfilled, you do not perform a technique. You become the person who already has what you desire. You enter that state of consciousness, and from that state the world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match your assumption. This is why most fail. They practice techniques instead of entering states. They try to get instead of assuming they already are. Tonight, when you retire to your bed, do this just once. Enter that drowsy state. Gently assume you are the person who already has what you desire. Feel it natural. Feel it real. Rest in that assumption and let sleep take you there. That is all. In the morning, you may find that circumstances have begun to shift, or you may find that your assumption must be persisted in for many nights. Both are well, my friend. Both are the law working perfectly. Never forget what I have told you tonight. Consciousness is the only reality. Imagining creates reality. When you change your state, you change your world. May you sleep tonight in the arms of your fulfilled desire. May your assumption take root in the fertile soil of sleep. May you wake tomorrow knowing that what you have assumed in consciousness must harden into fact in your world. The power is within you now. It has always been within you. You need only assume what you desire to be, and live from that assumption until it becomes your experience. Until we meet again, my friend, may you dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled.